Hi and welcome back to part 2 of phase 1 and how to prepare your children for school. In part 1 we talked about why it's so important for children to get a really good experience of phase 1, and I talked briefly through aspect 1 to 4, giving you a couple of examples of how you can work with children of preschool age on phase 1 aspects. Today I'm going to go through aspects 5 to 7, and hopefully by the end of the video you'll agree that phase 1 is too important to miss. So aspect 5 is alliteration, and I've had many questions over the years about why on earth preschool children need to know about alliteration. Well, simply put, alliteration is going to help the children with their articulation, their pronunciation, and their ability to hear initial sounds in words. So yes, alliteration is incredibly important. Develop the skills of children being able to hear initial sounds within words. Alliteration is when you have a list of words and they all begin with the same phoneme. So words like hairy hat, has hands, they all begin with a h sound. So children can start to realise when they're playing games like 5 fat sausages sizzling in a pan, that sausages and sizzling start with a phoneme. So there are lots of different alliteration games in the Letters and Sounds document that you can refer to. But I want to talk to you about how you can use aspect 5 to really work on clear pronunciation, whether children have speech and language delays or whether they have those typical difficulties that many children have. So if we think about a sound that many children find hard to form and differentiate between, we think about words beginning with f and words beginning with f. Very often children get those mixed up, and instead of saying finger, they say thinger. Again, this is a really common phase that many children go through, not because of speech and language delays, just because it's a very common misconception. So you can use aspect 5 to deal with that misconception. So if you have a child who can hear that all of the words are beginning with a f, fish, flap, finger, that's brilliant, but don't be tempted to then move on to phase 2. Embed that knowledge further and get the children used to clear articulation. I'm going to give you an example. So you could play, and I went to the shop and I bought game, that traditional game, but you're going to include the phonemes that they are finding difficult to pronounce. There will be different ones for lots of children, but ones that are very common. So we're thinking about the f and the th misconception right now. Finger, flap, thunder, fish. Which one was wrong? Did you see my mouth change when I was making those sounds? Most of them started with f, and my teeth were on my bottom lip, but one of them started with th, and my tongue came out of my mouth. Did you spot it? Let's have another go. And you can see there how you're modelling really clear speech, how you are modelling the positioning of your mouth when you're playing these games, and then you can get the children to do that back for you by challenging you with a list of words. It goes without saying that children with speech and language delays may find learning to read that little bit more challenging. Therefore, phase 1 and aspect 5 is even more crucial for those children. Whether we have different silly songs and silly rhymes, making it as fun as possible to practice getting those sounds clearly out of their mouths. Now, part of that, as well as being fun and having lots of games and lots of experiences, is about the adult that's with those children and how clearly the adult speaks. Getting the children to look at your mouth and what your mouth does as you form different sounds. And it's not talking about the sounds of looking at the letters and getting the children to say the sounds. It is purely about what sounds they hear and how they can transfer those sounds out of their mouths. I feel like this is a really important time to mention those physical factors that might hinder children's speech and language development. Now, all three of my children had a dummy at night time to help them self-soothe. I'm not getting into the debate about whether dummies are a good or a bad thing, but whether children have a dummy or a thumb, I think it's really important to note that when children are awake during awake hours and playing and learning to speak, that you get rid of that dummy. Children who talk through their dummy are definitely at a disadvantage in their development of learning to speak clearly and articulately. Aspect 6 is called voice sounds, and again this can help with the children's articulation and pronunciation, but it can also help with their memory and their listening skills. So the children need to be able to really have a great control over their mouth muscles, their control of their tongue, because not all of our sounds come from our mouth, some of them come from further back. So you need to do lots of different exercises to support the children. Again, in the letters and sounds document there are lots of ideas for different games for this, but I want to think about how you can really challenge children as well as support those who do have speech and language difficulties. So if we have a think about really difficult words like feather, so often children can't say feather and they say feather and they get it the wrong way round, so they really have to move their mouths quite quickly in order to be able to say words like feather. They're tricky. So voice sound is all about practicing changing your voice, moving your mouth muscles as quickly as you can. Can they make a really high pitched sound? Can they change it to a really low sound? And again, with reading, that will help with their expression when they are reading. Aspect 6 can also help with their listening skills. So if you are challenging the children to play a game and they all have to moo like a cow, they need to be tuned in to the game and the children around them. So you might have somebody in the middle with their eyes closed and their ears are listening, and all of the children around them have to make a moo sound. Can they distinguish which one was their best friend, the voice they are used to hearing? Can they listen so carefully that they can tell the difference between Fred making a moo sound and their best friend Sam? So you can see there how those sorts of games not only help with their pronunciation, it also helps with their intense listening skills. The final aspect is aspect 7, absolutely crucial for children to be able to read and write. Aspect 7 is oral blending and segmenting. So that is all about being able to say it and hear it. It is not about being able to recognise those letters and the sounds they make. It is all about this and this, as I talked about in part 1 yesterday. So blending is where we have phonemes that we're listening to and we are putting them all together to produce a word. So that is the skill children will need to be able to read. Segmenting is the opposite. It's where you hear a word and you can break it up into the sounds. So if you hear the word ham, you're able to break that down into so you can hear it's got 3 phonemes in. Now that skill is for writing. Again, I want to stress this aspect in phase 1 is not about letters, it's about what you hear. It's vital to note here how crucial the adult modelling is when you are playing these oral blending and segmenting games. Even though you are not looking at letters at the moment, they still are hearing all of the different phonemes that eventually they will come into contact with in phase 2. Pure sounds is where you pronounce the sounds clearly and without an at the end. So instead of s, it's s. Instead of p, it's p. If you pronounce the sounds clearly and in a pure way, the children will find blending them together a whole lot easier. So be really careful that you don't say s-a-t and you say s-a-t when you are playing oral blending and segmenting games. Without the skill of oral blending and segmenting, simply put, children will not learn to read. They may be able to recognise that the letter S makes a S but when it comes to actually reading, without blending, it just won't happen. So this skill is so crucial and should absolutely be the focus of preschoolers before they start school. Playing alongside the children is a great way to practice oral blending and segmenting skills. Imagine you're playing with some blocks and you're building a really tall tower. Instead of saying to the children, "Can you pass me the red block please?" say to the children, "Please could you pass me the red block?" And they will just pass you the red block. There's no pressure, there's no sitting down to learn. It's all through play, and children, when they are happy in their play, feeling safe and engaged, it takes the pressure off and they can blend much easier. You can then practice the segmenting skill by encouraging the children to ask for things in code or like a robot would, and that will practice their segmenting skills. It's wrong to assume that blending will come before segmenting or segmenting will come before blending. Some children will find blending much easier and will come to them quicker. Other children will find segmenting much easier and it will come to them before the blending skill. We don't have to worry about that. We just have to make the children are exposed to lots and lots and lots and lots of practice. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be recording lots of videos that will cover strategies from phase 1 to phase 5. So no matter what stage your children are at, whether in your classroom, your nursery or at home, there will be something for you. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me at The Phonics Queen, and on there will be lots of really short practical clips for you to try at home in your setting or in your classroom. So please head over to there and follow me there too. If you like the videos, you like my message, please share my group with as many colleagues, friends and practitioners as you can. Let's get the word out there that let's take the pressure off the children and let's create excellent readers, writers and spellers.